So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto, the son of All for One, wielded the Primal Quirk, Maelstrom. Naruto x Rumi Usagiyama Mirko, My Hero Academia. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Chapter 1. The Eye of the Storm. The city exhaled, a weary sigh of a million lives packed into a suffocating concrete labyrinth. Above, the sky groaned, bruised and swollen with an impending tempest. Rain began, tentative at first, then hammered down, with the relentless fury of a frustrated god, washing the already grimy streets with a fleeting, artificial sheen. Lightning cracked, momentarily etching the skeletal silhouettes of skyscrapers against the churning heavens. And thunder followed, a guttural roar that vibrated through the very foundations of the earth. It was a symphony of urban decay and natural violence, and Naruto Uzumaki, a fig. Shrouded in the escalating maelstrom, found it perfectly conducive to his work. He stood atop the rusting skeleton of a forgotten water tower, its skeletal frame creaking under the assault of the wind and rain. Below him, the abandoned industrial complex stretched, a graveyard of forgotten ambitions. Corrugated iron roofs had long since collapsed, revealing cavernous interiors choked with debris and the ghosts of defunct machinery. The air tasted of ozone, damp concrete, and the faint, acrid tang of something indefinable, something that always clung to places where immense power had been unleashed. This was his sanctuary, his proving ground, his crucible. Tonight, however, was different. Tonight, the storm outside was merely an extension of the storm within. A low hum emanated from Naruto, a vibration that started in the soles of his boots and resonated through the very steel of the tower. His usually untamed blonde hair, streaked with subtle crimson tips, seemed to ripple, the red deepening to an almost molten hue. His cerulean eyes, typically alight with a mix of sharp intelligence and weary amusement, were now twin points of absolute, focused intensity. This was the nascent manifestation of his primal quirk, Maelstrom. He raised a hand, not in supplication, but in command. The rain, falling in sheets around him, suddenly hesitated, then distorted. Droplets elongated, stretched, then snapped back, forming miniature, chaotic spirals of water that spun violently in the air before dissolving into vapor. The wind, which had been whipping at his clothes with gale force aggression, now coiled around him. A docile, powerful serpent. Focus, Naruto, he murmured to himself, his voice a low, gravelly counterpoint to the storm's cacophony. Control, precision, not just brute force. He lowered his hand, and the water droplets reformed, plummeting back to earth with renewed vigor. The wind roared its freedom. His training was less about physical exertion and more about mental and spiritual mastery. Maelstrom was not just a power, it was a fundamental force, an extension of his will. He didn't generate wind or gravity, he manipulated the existing, latent energies, bending them to his whim. The difference was subtle but profound. It meant his power was virtually limitless, bounded only by his own understanding and control. He leapt from the water tower, a silhouette against a sudden, blinding flash of lightning. He didn't fall. Instead, he simply displaced the air beneath him, creating a temporary, controlled pocket of anti-gravity that cushioned his descent. He landed with the soft thud of a cat on the rusted-out roof of a dilapidated warehouse, the impact barely disturbing the pooled rainwater. His movements were fluid, economical, a deadly dance of practiced precision. Inside the warehouse, a collection of hulking, dismantled machinery lay dormant, their metallic forms reflecting the intermittent flashes from outside. This was his true training ground. He envisioned a threat, a phantom enemy, not the weak thugs he sometimes encountered on the streets, but something that would push him, truly challenge him. He closed his eyes, his maelstrom quirk extending outward, a tactile sense probing the empty space. He felt the minute vibrations of the falling rain, the distant rumble of the city, the thrumming of hidden power lines. He opened his eyes. A small, innocent puddle of water shimmered on the concrete floor before him. With a minute shift in his will, the puddle began to churn. It didn't ripple, it spiraled, faster and faster, forming a miniature, perfectly formed vortex. The vortex compressed, the water becoming denser, almost solid, until it was a small, sapphire blue sphere, humming with contained kinetic energy. He flicked his wrist. The sphere shot forward, a blur of motion, striking a derelict steel beam with an impact that reverberated through the entire structure. The beam groaned, buckled, and then sheared clean in two. The severed ends glowing dull red from the friction of the strike. Too much kinetic transfer, Naruto analyzed, his brow furrowed in concentration. Unnecessary collateral. Need more focused dissipation. He repeated the exercise, this time manifesting the maelstrom as an invisible wave of pure gravitational distortion. He sent it rippling across the floor. An ancient, rusted forklift, weighing several tons, wobbled, then began to slide erratically across the floor, as if caught in an invisible, churning current. He directed it, guiding it through a complex obstacle course of overturned barrels and discarded metal sheets, demonstrating a frightening level of control over immense forces. This wasn't just about destruction, it was about finesse, about manipulating the very fabric of reality. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open. The subtle hum of his quirk, extended like a myriad of invisible antennae, registered something. Not the natural storm, not the city's distant thrum, but a sharp, unnatural tremor. A breach. He wasn't alone. A low, predatory smile touched Naruto's lips, a flash of white in the dim light. Well, that's a refreshing change. The intrusion wasn't subtle. A section of the warehouse wall, reinforced steel designed to withstand minor explosions, simply exploded inwards, not with a bang, but with a guttural roar of tortured metal. 3 figures, dark and hulking, burst through the newly formed aperture, followed by a squad of 6 others, moving with practiced, synchronized precision. These weren't common street thugs. Each wore custom-fitted combat gear, sleek and dark, with integrated support items glowing with faint, menacing energy. Their quirks, evident even in their movements, spoke of coordinated, specialized abilities. The lead figure, a brute of AM, and whose arms seemed disproportionately large, was covered in thick, rock-like plates. His quirk, Geocrusher, was evident in the crater he left with each step. "We got a hit on unusual energy signatures," he rumbled, his voice distorted by an internal comms unit. "High-level anomaly. Seems we found the source." Naruto didn't move from his perch atop a stack of shipping containers. He simply observed, assessing. Their gear wasn't Hero Commission standard. Too black market, too militaristic. "You're a long way from home, gentlemen," he stated, his voice calm, even pleasant, cutting through the echoes of the storm. "Lost, perhaps. This isn't exactly a tourist destination." Geocrusher sneered. "Smartass. You're the one messing with high-grade power surges. My employers don't like freelancers stomping on their territory." He raised one of his massive, rock-plated fists. "We're here to shut you down. Permanently." "Employers, huh?" Naruto mused, a flicker of boredom in his eyes. "Always the middlemen. Never the ones with the real ambition. Pitiful, really." The insult, delivered with such casual disdain, infuriated Geocrusher. "Get him," he bellowed. The 9 villains launched their assault simultaneously. 1. With a quirk called Velocity Surge, transformed into a blur of motion, a human missile aimed directly at Naruto's head. His movements warped the air, leaving shimmering heat trails. Another, Acid Spit, took aim, preparing to unleash corrosive bile. The remaining 7 fanned out, creating a perimeter, some with ranged energy blasts, others with close-quarter combat quirks. Naruto didn't flinch. As Velocity Surge closed the distance, a wicked smile played on Naruto's lips. He didn't dodge. Instead, he simply shifted the air around him. It wasn't a gust of wind. It was a localized gravitational vortex, imperceptible to the naked eye, that abruptly twisted the trajectory of Velocity Surge. The villain, traveling at near supersonic speeds, found himself yanked violently off course, not by an external force, but by the sudden, unseen alteration of the very gravity he was using to propel himself. He slammed into the steel container next to Naruto with a sickening crunch, leaving a deep indentation. He crumpled, unconscious. "One down," Naruto calmly noted, ignoring the groans. "Quite messy, actually." Acid Spit, momentarily stunned by his comrade's sudden demise, hesitated. It was a fatal mistake. Before he could unleash his corrosive attack, Naruto extended a hand. A maelstrom of kinetic energy, invisible and swift, ripped through the air. It wasn't a physical projectile. It was a wave that directly targeted the internal mechanics of Acid Spit's quirk. The villain choked, his throat constricting, the acidic bile he was preparing for attack suddenly turning back on itself. He screamed, his own quirk consuming him from the inside. He fell, writhing, his body dissolving into a grotesque puddle of his own making. 2. Naruto stated, his voice chillingly devoid of emotion. And that's why you don't weaponize your own biology without understanding the recoil. Geocrusher roared, a sound of primal rage. He's toying with us. Don't let him breathe. Villains with energy-based quirks unleashed synchronized blasts, crimson bolts, searing white beams, and crackling arcs of electricity converged on Naruto's position. He raised both hands, palms open. The Maelstrom flared, a shimmering, almost invisible barrier of kinetic absorption. The energy blasts struck, but instead of impacting, they seemed to dissipate, dissolving into the shimmering field. Naruto absorbed the raw kinetic energy, the power coursing through him, exhilarating, revitalizing. He didn't just block, he consumed. He then clapped his hands together, not in a gesture of triumph, but of redirection. The absorbed energy, now amplified and refined, shot outwards, not as scattered blasts, but as a single, devastating focused energy pulse. It wasn't a wide-area attack. It was a precise, surgical strike. The 3 energy quirk users shrieked as the pulse hit them. Their quirks, designed to project, were now overwhelmed by the sheer, inverse force. Their internal power pathways short-circuited. Their bodies convulsing, before they collapsed, smoking and twitching, their quirks temporarily fried. 5 down, Naruto sighed, almost bored. Is this the best your employers can muster? I'd ask for a refund. Geocrusher, along with the remaining 4 close combat specialists, charged. 1, with a quirk called Iron Skin, was a hulking brute whose entire body was encased in hardened metal. Another, Vibration Step, moved with blurring speed, creating localized tremors with each step. The other 2 were twin sisters, their quirks, shadow tendrils, allowing them to extend dark, prehensile limbs from their bodies. Naruto leapt from the container, landing softly on the ground. He didn't evade, he met them. Iron Skin, confident in his invulnerability, swung a metallic fist. Naruto simply caught it, not with a grapple, but with a subtle manipulation of the gravitational field around the villain's fist. The fist, despite its immense mass, became lighter, slower, almost sluggish. Naruto twisted his wrist, not with brute strength, but with a sudden, localized gravitational torque. Iron Skin's arm bent at an unnatural angle, the reinforced metal groaning as his own weight, distorted by Naruto's quirk, pulled him off balance. With a quick, precise strike, Naruto delivered a focused kinetic impact to the villain's sternum, the force bypassing the Iron Skin and impacting his internal organs. Iron Skin gasped, then collapsed, unconscious. Vibration Step, faster and more agile, darted around Naruto, attempting to disorient him with rapid, ground-shaking movements. Naruto simply extended his senses, feeling the minute vibrations in the air, not just the ground. He anticipated every move. As Vibration Step closed in, Naruto manifested a maelstrom of wind, not a gale, but a tight, invisible funnel that snapped around Vibration Step's legs. The villain stumbled, his momentum lost, his finely tuned balance shattered. Naruto delivered a swift, concussive blow to the back of his neck. And Vibration Step joined his comrades in unconsciousness. The Shadow Tendril twins, far more cautious, kept their distance, extending their dark, writhing limbs towards Naruto, attempting to ensnare him. The tendrils were surprisingly strong, capable of crushing concrete. Naruto, however, treated them as mere annoyances. As the tendrils reached for him, he unleashed a miniature, intensely localized temporal flux. The tendrils, in his perception, seemed to slow, becoming ponderous and predictable. In the instant they slowed, he moved with impossible speed, a blur of motion. He didn't cut them. He simply touched the base of each tendril where it emerged from the twins' bodies, infusing them with a disruptive energy pulse. The shadow tendrils withered, retracting violently, causing the twins to cry out in pain and clutch their torsos as their quirks violently short-circuited. They collapsed, whimpering. Only Geocrusher remained, trembling with a mix of fear and impotent rage. He watched his entire squad, each a skilled professional, fall before this blonde enigma who barely seemed to exert himself. Last one, Naruto said, his voice quiet, devoid of malice. Yet infinitely more terrifying than any threat. Are you going to be boring like the rest, or do you have something unique for me? Geocrusher roared, a desperate, animalistic sound, and slammed his fists into the ground. The concrete cracked, fissures spreading rapidly, and jagged rock formations erupted from the floor, aimed at impaling Naruto. His quirk was raw, destructive, unsubtle. Naruto CMPLY watched the earth tear itself apart. As the rock spikes lunged for him, he didn't dodge. He extended his hands, palms outward. The Maelstrom manifested as pure, counter-gravitational force. The rising rock spikes hesitated, then crumbled, falling back into the ground as if drawn by an irresistible, downward pull. Geocrusher screamed as his own quirk, instead of rising, was now being violently pulled into the earth, threatening to drag him down with it. His rock plating cracked under the immense, unseen pressure. No, Naruto stated, his eyes cold. Not unique, just more brute force, predictable. He released the gravitational pressure, and Geocrusher gasped for air, collapsing onto the floor, trembling. Naruto walked over to him, his footsteps unnaturally light. He knelt down, his mere inches from the villain's terrified gaze. Tell your employers, Naruto said, his voice a low, dangerous whisper that cut through the thunder outside, that this territory is now off limits. Tell them if they send more cannon fodder, they'll find their operations, their quirks, and their very existence torn apart. Explain to them the true meaning of a maelstrom. He paused, a flicker of something almost sympathetic in his eyes. And tell them to stop wasting such potent quirks on such pointless endeavors. It's truly a shame. He stood up, leaving Geocrusher hyperventilating on the floor. He glanced at the carnage, the shattered walls, the disabled villains, the lingering scent of ozone and burnt metal. A faint sigh escaped him. Well, that's done. He was about to leave, to continue his self-imposed training, when his highly attuned senses picked up something else. Something fast, something powerful, and something very, very angry. The second breach was less of an explosion and more of a rupture. The air itself seemed to tear, a violent gust of wind preceding the arrival of a figure who moved with the untamed force of a hurricane. She burst through the same jagged opening in the wall, leaving a trail of splintered concrete and twisted rebar in her wake. Her arrival was an exclamation point on the chaos. Her pristine white leotard, black and yellow accents, and the imposing, powerful rabbit ears that twitched with every shift in the air, instantly identified her. Mirko, the rabbit hero, rank 5, a woman who embodied pure, unadulterated power and an unwavering will. She landed, not with a controlled grace, but with an impactful force that sent a tremor through the floor. Her scarlet eyes, sharp and predatory, immediately scanned the scene. They landed on the unconscious villains, then on the impossible damage, and finally, on Naruto, who stood amidst it all, seemingly unruffled. What in the living hell happened here? Mirko's voice was a low growl, powerful and resonant, cutting through the drumming rain outside. She was not asking a question, she was demanding an explanation, her body coiled, every muscle tense, ready to spring. These goons, this destruction, and you. What are you? Some kind of one-man demolition crew? Naruto turned slowly, a faint, almost amused smile playing on his lips. He finally had a worthy opponent, or at least, an interesting challenge. Demolition crew? No, that's far too pedestrian. I'm merely tidying up. His voice held a casual confidence that grated on Mirko's nerves. These gentlemen were trespassing, and frankly, they were making a mess. Mirko's ears flattened slightly. Trespassing. This isn't your property, kid. And this level of damage screams unregistered quirk usage, at best, villain activity, at worst. You gonna explain yourself, or am I gonna have to extract the answers? Her leg muscles tensed, a clear sign of impending action. Extract. Naruto scoffed lightly. That sounds tedious, and rather presumptuous. I assure you, my activities here are entirely my own business. And yours, hero, is to protect. These men were a threat. I merely expedited their removal. Expedited their removal. Mirko exploded, her patience wearing thin. You've practically leveled a city block. And you think I'm just going to take your word for it, some unknown with a quirk that clearly doesn't know the meaning of restraint. Her foot slammed down, cracking the concrete. I'm Mirko, and I don't tolerate loose cannons, especially not ones who leave a trail of destruction like this. Naruto's smile widened, a glint of genuine enjoyment in his eyes. Mirko, the rabbit hero. Reputable, powerful, and surprisingly, quite predictable in your righteous fury. He took a slow step towards her. Restraint, you say? Perhaps you should ask your unconscious colleagues what happens when one is unrestrained around me. He gestured vaguely at the fallen villains. Mirko's eyes narrowed. Don't you dare try to lecture me. I saw the energy spikes from across town. This wasn't some minor scuffle. This was a maelstrom, just like your quirk. Her ears twitched, picking up on the lingering energy signatures. So, Maelstrom, is it? A fitting name for someone who seems to cause nothing but chaos. Chaos is merely untamed order, Naruto countered, his voice losing its amusement, gaining a serious edge. And chaos can be wielded, controlled. My quirk is Maelstrom because it encompasses every force, every energy. And I assure you, I am very much in control. He paused, his gaze intensifying. The question, hero, is whether you are in control of your assumptions. That was the last straw. Mirko, a hero who prided herself on decisive action and her instincts, felt a surge of adrenaline. This man was powerful, arrogant, and utterly unfazed by her presence. He was a challenge, a raw, untamed force that mirrored her own. Her fight-or-flight response screamed, fight. Talk is cheap, pretty boy, Mirko growled, crouching slightly. Her powerful legs flexing. Show me your control, or I'll show you what happens when a rabbit stops playing nice. Naruto chuckled, a low, confident sound. Finally, I was beginning to think you were all bark and no bite. He extended a hand, not as a challenge, but as an invitation. Come then, rabbit, let's see if your hops can match my storm. The ensuing confrontation was less a fight and more a force of nature meeting an immovable object. Or rather, an unstoppable force meeting another unstoppable force. Mirko launched herself forward, a blur of white and black. Her incredible quirk. Rabbit allowing her to propel herself with bone-shattering force. Her first kick, aimed at Naruto's head, was a blur, capable of shattering concrete and bending steel. Naruto didn't block. He didn't dodge conventionally. Instead, as Mirko's foot closed in, he subtly manipulated the kinetic energy around his head. Her kick connected, but instead of the skull-crushing impact she intended. It felt like hitting a cushion of pure force. The impact dissipated, flowing around Naruto, through him, and then outward, causing a ripple of distortion in the air behind him. Mirko's eyes widened fractionally. Her attack, one that had crumpled Nomu and shattered villain strongholds, had been completely nullified. Impressive kinetic absorption, Mirko acknowledged, a thrill of excitement coursing through her. This wasn't just some brute. But can you do it again? She unleashed a rapid-fire volley of kicks, each one a miniature sonic boom. Luna Rush. She struck from every angle, her speed almost impossible to follow. Naruto moved, not with overt dodges, but with minute shifts in his body, subtly redirecting the path of her strikes. He twisted his torso, rotated his arm, tilted his head. Each movement a micro-adjustment of his own gravitational field or the kinetic energy of her blows. He was less deflecting and more sculpting the flow of her attacks around him. Mirko snarled, pushing harder. She lunged, aiming a devastating Luna arc kick, a crescent-shaped aerial assault designed to cleave through anything. Naruto met it, his hand, glowing with a subtle, crimson aura of condensed maelstrom energy. Met her extended leg. There was no explosive shockwave, no shattering impact. Instead, a silent, powerful force field shimmered into existence between them, a pure, unyielding barrier. Her kick, despite its immense power, simply stopped, halted by an unseen, irresistible wall. Quite the kick, Naruto said, his voice strained but still calm, a vein throbbing faintly on his temple. This was pushing him, but brute force alone won't work. Mirko grinned, a feral flash of teeth. Oh, I'm just getting warmed up, pretty boy. She shifted her weight, channeling her immense leg strength. Her quirk allowed her to store and release kinetic energy. She released it all, a concentrated burst of power through her foot, trying to overload Naruto's shield. The concrete beneath their feet groaned, buckling under the sheer, localized pressure. Naruto's eyes narrowed. He felt the immense power pressing against his Maelstrom shield. It wasn't enough to break it, but it was enough to make him work. He retaliated. He didn't push back with a force field. Instead, he subtly twisted the gravitational field around her leg. Mirko suddenly felt her limb become impossibly heavy, dragging her down, off balance. Her stored kinetic energy, instead of flowing forward, was now fighting against an unseen, crushing weight. What the hell? Mirko grunted, momentarily thrown. Her balance was impeccable, but this was an internal force, a warping of her own mass. Naruto capitalized on her momentary disorientation. He didn't strike. Instead, he unleashed a localized maelstrom of wind. Not strong enough to blow her away, but tight, focused, and designed to disrupt her senses. The wind whipped around her, buffeting her ears, distorting sound, making it impossible for her to pinpoint his next move by sound alone. He then moved, not with his usual fluid grace, but with a sudden burst of kinetic supercharge. He appeared before her in an instant, a blur. Mirko, disoriented, barely reacted. He struck, not with a punch or a kick, but with an open-palmed strike to her solar plexus. The strike was devoid of physical impact. Instead, it delivered a concentrated shockwave of kinetic nullification. Mirko gasped, her breath knocked out of her. It felt as if all the energy in her body had suddenly drained away. Her muscles spasmed, her powerful legs felt like jelly. She stumbled back, momentarily helpless. Eyes wide in shock. That, Naruto stated, his hand still extended, a wisp of maelstrom energy dissipating from his palm, is what happens when your own power becomes your weakness. I didn't hit you. I simply told your body to stop moving with force. Mirko glared, her breath slowly returning, her muscles beginning to twitch back to life. She hadn't been defeated, not truly. But she had been nullified. And the sheer audacity, the intelligence behind the attack, sent a shiver down her spine. This wasn't just power, it was a deeper understanding of fundamental principles. You bastard, she finally rasped, a grudging admiration seeping into her voice despite herself. You're not just strong, you're a walking anomaly. She straightened up, slowly regaining her composure. But her guard was up in a way it rarely was. What exactly is that quirk? Naruto lowered his hand, his maelstrom receding, the crimson tips of his hair returning to their original shade. It's called Maelstrom, and as you've seen, it's rather versatile. He gestured around the destroyed warehouse. It allows me to manipulate virtually any force, kinetic, gravitational, thermal, even localized temporal flux. It's all just energy, waiting to be bent. Mirko stared, processing his words. Any force. That's beyond anything I've ever seen. It's almost primal. The word escaped her lips before she could stop it. Naruto's eyes flickered, a subtle shift. He didn't elaborate, but a new, almost somber note entered his voice. Indeed, it is, and some forces are best left undisturbed. He glanced at the unconscious villains. These men were attempting to tap into something they didn't understand. A greater power, a larger conspiracy. They were pawns. Mirko raised an eyebrow. Conspiracy? What are you talking about? Are you some kind of vigilante, then? Vigilante is a quaint term, Naruto mused. I prefer an independent agent of necessary disruption. And yes, conspiracy. Bigger than these small-time goons. They were trying to replicate something, an energy signature they detected from this very spot, from my own training. His gaze turned sharp, locking onto hers. Something powerful, something ancient, and something someone else, someone far more dangerous, is very interested in acquiring. Mirko felt a chill, despite the humid air. Her hero instincts screamed at her to demand more, to apprehend him, but her gut, honed by years of street-level intuition, told her something else. This man, for all his arrogance and destructive power, wasn't a villain in the conventional sense. He fought with purpose, with a terrifying precision, and an almost detached sense of justice. And he had just proven he could fight her to a standstill without even trying to kill her. He could have, easily. So, you're saying you're chasing after bigger fish? Mirko asked, a hint of grudging respect in her tone. And these clowns were just collateral damage. Precisely, Naruto affirmed. They were interfering with my investigation. And quite frankly, they were boring. You, on the other hand." He paused, his eyes raking over her, a slow, appreciative look that somehow wasn't lecherous, but genuinely admiring of her strength and ferocity. "You're far from boring, Rabbit." Mirko felt an unfamiliar flush spread across her cheeks, a mix of annoyance and a strange, unfamiliar thrill. No one had ever spoken to her like that, challenged her so utterly, and then complimented her with such genuine, predatory approval. It was unsettling, and undeniably, exciting. "Don't call me Rabbit," she snapped, though her tone lacked its usual bite. "And don't think that just because you put up a decent fight, I'm letting you off the hook. This is still a crime scene, and you're still an unregistered quirk user who caused significant property damage." Naruto simply shrugged, turning to walk towards the shattered wall where he had entered. "I've already handled the threat. As for the crime scene, I'd advise the Hero Commission to send a cleanup crew with a specialized quirk for kinetic residue. And as for my registration, that's a discussion for another time, Hero. A time when you're less prone to jumping to conclusions and more open to understanding the bigger picture." He reached the edge of the demolished wall, the pouring rain now visible through the gaping hole. He paused, looking back at her over his shoulder. "You're strong, Mirko," he said, his voice quiet, almost a whisper, yet it resonated with conviction. "Stronger than most. But there's a storm coming that will test every hero, every villain, and every quirk to their absolute limits. A storm that makes this look like a puddle. And when that storm breaks, you might find yourself wishing you had an ally who understands its true nature." He didn't wait for her reply. With a single, silent leap, he vanished into the torrential downpour, disappearing into the chaotic embrace of the electrical storm, leaving Mirko alone amidst the wreckage. Mirko stood there, drenched by the rain, her powerful body still humming with residual adrenaline. She looked at the unconscious villains, then at the impossible damage to the warehouse, then at the spot where Naruto had vanished. Her mind raced, grappling with the encounter. He hadn't just defeated those villains, he had dismantled them, their quirks, and their very confidence. And he had fought her, the unyielding Mirko, to a standstill, not with brute force, but with a terrifying, almost elegant mastery of fundamental forces. A grudging respect, tinged with a deep, unsettling curiosity, settled over her. He was dangerous, yes. But he was also compelling. He was a force of nature, a maelstrom in human form, and she, the untamed rabbit, found herself inexplicably drawn to the raw, untamed power he wielded. "Maelstrom, huh," she muttered to the empty air, a slow, thoughtful grin spreading across her lips. "I think I've just found a new sparring partner. Or maybe, something far more interesting." The thunder rolled again, a distant echo of the storm that had just passed, and the storm that was yet to come. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Echoes of the past. Whispers of the future. The incessant, rhythmic drip of condensation against sterile, polished chrome was the only sound in the oppressive silence. It was a sound that seemed to mock the very concept of warmth or life, a metallic pulse in a tomb of engineered efficiency. Naruto Uzumaki, a figure of stark contrast against the gleaming, clinical aesthetics, moved through labyrinthine corridors of the clandestine research facility with the silent precision of a phantom. Gone was the raw, untamed force of the maelstrom he'd unleashed against Mirko. Here, his quirk was a whisper, a subtle manipulation of light and sound, of air currents and minute vibrations, making him utterly undetectable. The facility, known only in hushed whispers as the Chrysalis Project, in the darker corners of the information network Naruto had recently tapped, was a testament to hubris and cutting-edge, ethically dubious science. Buried 300 meters beneath a seemingly innocuous corporate skyscraper in the heart of a city renowned for its technological prowess, it was a gleaming serpent of steel and glass, its true purpose shrouded in layers of corporate espionage and political maneuvering. The air, filtered to an almost unnatural purity, carried the faint, unsettling scent of ionized particles and something vaguely metallic, like ozone mixed with refined fear. Naruto's objective was clear: retrieve the data. The information extracted from the now unconscious villain squad in the industrial complex had yielded fragmented, encrypted files, whispers of unusual energy signatures. A project code named Chrysalis, and unsettling correlations with rare quirk types, including a specific, redacted reference to primal resonance. The pieces, scattered and incomplete, coalesced into a disturbing picture, one that resonated with the increasingly unsettling truths he was uncovering about his own quirk, Maelstrom, and its enigmatic origins. He paused before a reinforced blast door, its surface seamless, unmarked by visible keypads or sensors. His fingers brushed against the cool metal. He didn't need external tools. His quirk flowed, not as a destructive wave, but as an intricately fine-tuned frequency. He felt the minute electromagnetic pulses within the door's locking mechanism, the subtle hum of its power conduits. With a silent, almost imperceptible shift of his will, he disrupted the localized magnetic field, momentarily scrambling the delicate internal circuitry. A soft click echoed in the silence as the massive door slid open, revealing another identical corridor. "Amateurs," he murmured, a faint, almost imperceptible scoff. "Relying on physical barriers when the very forces that bind atoms can be manipulated." He continued deeper, the core. Ritters branching into a bewildering maze of laboratories, containment chambers, and data archives. The facility was eerily quiet, the only signs of activity being automated drones patrolling silently overhead, and the faint, almost imperatorial hum of massive server banks. The silence was unnerving, more so than any hostile encounter. It spoke of absolute control, of a hidden hand pulling intricate strings. His quirk was a constant, almost subconscious extension of his senses. He felt the subtle pressure changes in the air that indicated a hidden camera's lens, the micro-vibrations of concealed laser grids. The faint psychic residue of passive quirk detection systems. He wove through them all, a ghost in the machine, his movements fluid, economical, and devoid of wasted energy. He used lock, a leased temporal flux to perceive and bypass laser grids before they could register his presence, gravity manipulation to scale seemingly sheer walls, and kinetic absorption to deaden his footsteps entirely. He reached a large observation deck overlooking a massive, circular chamber, the heart of the Chrysalis project. Below, a colossal, crystalline cocoon pulsed with a sickly, internal light, suspended within a shimmering force field. Around it, dozens of scientists in pristine white lab coats moved with methodical purpose, their faces grim, their movements precise. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing complex schematics, energy readings, and terrifyingly, a slow, agonizing process of quirk mutation being forced upon living subjects contained within smaller, adjacent chambers. Naruto's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about power, it was about twisted experimentation, about forcing unnatural evolutions. He saw the suffering, the silent agony in the distorted forms within the containment cells. He felt a cold, righteous anger simmer beneath his carefully maintained composure. His lineage, the inherent understanding of the raw, untamed power he wielded, made such egregious abuses even more abhorrent to him. This was not the proper application of power, this was desecration. He needed to get into the central control room, to access their main servers. He located it, a heavily fortified console elevated above the chamber, a glass partition separating it from the grotesque spectacle below. His eyes scanned for the most efficient route, his mind already calculating trajectories, security protocols, and potential resistance. Just then, a voice, calm and precise, resonated through the internal comms system of the facility. "Attention all personnel. An unscheduled breach has occurred in Sector Gamma. High probability of an unregistered quirk user. Initiate lockdown protocols. Prioritize data integrity. Do not engage directly unless authorized. Our assets are too valuable." Naruto grinned. "Too late, Chief Scientist," he murmured. "I'm already past Gamma, and your assets are about to become liabilities." The sudden blaring of alarms was a jarring cacophony in the previously silent facility. Red emergency lights bathed the pristine corridors in a pulsating, infernal glow. Automated turrets whirred to life, extending from hidden compartments in the walls, their targeting lasers sweeping the empty passages. Naruto didn't react with panic, only with a subtle increase in his Maelstrom's ambient field, heightening his spatial awareness. He moved faster now, but no less precisely, weaving through the laser grids and dodging the precise, high-caliber fire from the turrets. He wasn't destroying them, he was subtly disrupting their targeting systems, ca. using their shots to veer harmlessly off course or jam. He reached the heavily fortified entrance to the main control room. 2 hulking security guards, their bodies reinforced with armored skin quirk and wielding non-lethal but still devastating sonic cannons, stood ready. Freeze. One bellowed, his voice distorted by his helmet. You're in a restricted area. Identify yourself. Unnecessary. Naruto replied, his voice calm amidst the blaring alarms. I'm merely here to shut down your little carnival of horrors. Before they could react, Naruto unleashed a concentrated, localized burst of static electricity. Not a lightning bolt, but a pure, disruptive charge that overloaded their comms, their HUDs, and the intricate sensory systems in their helmets. They screamed as their internal electronics fried, sparks showering from their gear. Blinded and disoriented, they stumbled, clutching their heads. Naruto moved past them, silent and swift, entering the control room. The room was a hive of activity. A dozen or so scientists and technicians scrambling, their faces a mask of panic as alarms blared and data streams flickered erratically across massive screens. Their leader, a cadaverous man with sharp features and cold, calculating eyes, barked orders into a headset. He's in. He bypassed the inner perimeter. Divert power to data scrubbers. Initiate failsafe protocols. Burn it all. The lead scientist shrieked. Naruto entered, surveying the scene with a detached gaze. Such desperation. A clear sign of guilt. He was about to unleash a non-lethal, incapacitating wave of miles. Trom when his eyes caught sight of a figure hunched over a console in a corner, her back to him. She was dressed in a specialized lab jumpsuit, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She was frantically typing, not to erase data, but to divert it, to save it. Her movements were precise, elegant, and filled with a desperate urgency that spoke of genuine distress, not malicious intent. Wait, Naruto commanded, his voice sharp, cutting through the chaos. You there, what are you doing? The figure startled, turning swiftly. It was a young woman, no older than 18, with striking, legent eyes that widened in surprise and a hint of fear as she saw him. Her name, he recognized instantly from public hero scouting profiles, was Momo Yaoyorozu. Her creation quirk was legendary, her intellect equally so. She was a prodigy. I'm trying to override the data wipe. Momo exclaimed, her voice surprisingly steady despite the pandemonium. They're trying to destroy everything. The research, the evidence, the suffering they've inflicted. Her eyes burned with a fierce, moral indignation. The lead scientist, seeing Naruto distracted, suddenly lunged for a hidden button on his console, a final, desperate attempt to trigger a self-destruct sequence or a complete data purge. Naruto reacted, not towards the scientist. His eyes, fixed on Momo, caught a flicker of recognition, a genuine desire to protect. Instead of attacking the scientist directly, he unleashed a sharp, focused gust of Maelstrom wind, a miniature hurricane confined to the immediate vicinity of the scientist's hand. The gust slammed into the man's arm, twisting it violently, sending him sprawling away from the console, screaming in pain as his arm buckled. Impressive reflexes, Momo murmured, momentarily forgetting the situation, impressed by his precise and non-lethal action. Then she refocused, her fingers flying across the holographic keyboard. But they're accelerating the purge. I need more processing power, more time. Naruto assessed the situation. He couldn't risk physical damage to the console, the data was paramount. How much time? He asked, his voice calm. Seconds. Momo responded, EAD of sweat tracing a path down her temple. The primary server core is self-destructing. I need to establish a direct neural link to bypass their encryption, but my support items are incompatible with their archaic architecture. Neural link, Naruto echoed, a spark of interest in his eyes. Interesting. What do you need? A high-frequency bio-amplifier, specifically tuned to my quirk's unique energetic signature. To process the data transfer without causing a system overload. Momo rattled off, her brilliant mind already devising a solution. Naruto's lips quirked. Convenient. My quirk is all about energetic signatures. He stepped towards her. Extend your hand. I'll provide the bio-amplifier. Momo hesitated for only a fraction of a second. The man was an enigma, seemingly a rogue element. But his actions had saved the data, and his eyes held a strange, compelling intensity. She trusted her gut. She extended her hand, palm up. Naruto placed his hand gently on hers, his fingers subtly intertwining. He didn't just touch her. His Maelstrom quirk flowed into her, not as a raw force, but as a finely tuned, resonant frequency. He felt the intricate pathways of her creation quirk, the precise energetic signature she mentioned. He didn't create a physical device. He became the amplifier, shaping his own energy to perfectly match hers, forming a seamless, temporary conduit for the immense data transfer. Momo gasped, not in pain, but in awe. She felt an unprecedented surge of processing power, a clarity that allowed her to see the data streams, the encryption protocols, the very architecture of the server core. As if it were her own thoughts. Her eyes blazed with renewed determination. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, a blur of motion. "I'm in," she exclaimed, her voice tinged with exhilaration. "Diverting primary data core to secure off-site servers. It's working." While Momo worked, the remaining scientists and security personnel finally regained their bearings. Some lunged for weapons, others for emergency panic buttons. Naruto, still connected to Momo, his Maelstrom focused on assisting her, responded with effortless precision. He didn't engage them directly. He unleashed a series of targeted, non-lethal kinetic pulses, each one subtly tuned to disrupt the specific motor functions of each individual. One man found his legs suddenly unresponsive, collapsing. Another found his arms refusing to obey, dropping his weapon. They stumbled, disoriented, their bodies refusing to cooperate, but unharmed. The lead scientist, recovering from his arm injury, staggered towards a final emergency purge button, his eyes wide with desperate malice. "You fools! This data must not fall into the wrong hands. It will ruin everything." Naruto released Momo's hand for a moment, his eyes hardening. "Ruin your twisted ambitions, perhaps." He didn't move. He simply extended a single finger. A concentrated, invisible gravitational field compressed around the scientist, not to crush him, but to pin him to the floor, rendering him utterly immobile, gasping for breath as he struggled against an unseen weight. "Done," Momo exclaimed, pulling her hand away from the console. Her face flushed with exertion but alight with triumph. "All critical research data, subject records, and financial ledgers have been transferred to multiple secure, untraceable external servers." The purge was incomplete. Naruto nodded, releasing the scientist, who lay gasping on the floor. "Excellent work, Yaoyorozu. Efficient." He turned to face her fully, a genuine, appreciative look in his eyes. "Your intellect is as formidable as your quirk." Momo felt a warmth spread through her, a rare compliment that bypassed her status and acknowledged her competence. "And your quirk, Naruto. Oh-san. It's unlike anything I've ever encountered. The precision, the versatility, it's truly remarkable." She hesitated, then a determined glint entered her eyes. "You said there was a larger conspiracy. What is this primal resonance they were studying? And why were they experimenting on quirks in such a horrifying manner?" Naruto's expression grew serious. "The primal resonance is a theory, a whispered legend, of a fundamental energy that predates quirks, a source from which all quirks might have sprung. This organization, and others like them, are attempting to harness or replicate that energy, to force quirk evolution. Or to create synthetic quirks that are monstrously powerful. This Chrysalis project was one such attempt, trying to artificially mature quirks to their singularity point, but without understanding the ethical or cosmic implications." Momo gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "The quirk singularity doomsday theory. But that's just a theoretical concept, a progression that would take generations." Quote, "Not if you force it," Naruto countered, his voice grim. "These people were experimenting on innocent people, trying to extract or replicate their unique energetic signatures. Forcing uncontrolled mutations. They were close to a breakthrough, one that could have unleashed an uncontainable plague of uncontrolled, monstrous quirks upon the world, all for the sake of power. And the entity behind it all, his name is All for One." Momo's eyes widened in horror. "All for One. But he's supposed to be imprisoned. Or dead." "That's what the world believes," Naruto said, a dark shadow passing over his face. "But some shadows linger longer than others. And some influences transcend physical barriers. His legacy, his ambitions, are far from extinguished. In fact, they're growing, mutating. Just like the quirks he seeks to control. And this facility, this Chrysalis project, was just one small piece of a much larger, insidious network. Momo stared at him, her brilliant mind reeling, absorbing the terrifying implications. The Hero Commission, the established order, was clearly unaware of the true depth of this threat. Naruto, this mysterious, powerful figure, was operating outside the system, yet seemed to possess a deeper understanding of the true dangers. "We need to report this," Momo said, her voice firm. "The authorities, the Hero Commission, they need to know the full extent of this." Naruto shook his head slowly. "And tell them what? That an unregistered quirk user, who just dismantled their highly secure research facility, has uncovered a plot that contradicts all their established intelligence. They would bury it, dismiss it, or worse, try to control me. This level of threat requires a different approach. A precise, surgical one." He looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "This information, once processed, will be the key. But it needs to be understood by someone who can see beyond the official narrative. Someone with intellect, with courage, and with a commitment to justice, regardless of the red tape." Momo met his gaze. She understood. He was asking her to step outside her comfort zone, to defy the very institutions she had always trusted. For a greater good. It was a daunting prospect, but the horrifying images of the mutated quirks in the containment chambers, the chilling implications of AFO's lingering influence, solidified her resolve. I understand," Momo said, her voice gaining strength, a new determination in her eyes. "I will help you. This research, it cannot be allowed to continue. The world needs to know." Naruto offered her a rare, genuine smile, one that softened the sharp edges of his power. "Good. You have a keen mind, Yaoyorozu. And a strong moral compass. Those are rare and valuable assets." He extended his hand, not for connection, but in farewell. "Process the data. You'll find my contact information embedded within the data packet. It's a secure, untraceable channel. Use it when you've deciphered everything." Momo shook his hand, feeling a strange surge of camaraderie and mutual respect. "Naruto-san, will we meet again?" "Inevitably," Naruto replied, his smile lingering. "The path ahead is fraught with shadows. But also with revelations. And your intellect, Momo, will be invaluable in piercing through the darkest of them." He turned, not bothering to bypass the remaining security personnel who were slowly regaining their senses. He simply strode towards the exit, his form blurring, a faint shimmering distortion in the air as he activated a full-spectrum optical camouflage using his Maelstrom. He vanished, leaving Momo Yaoyorozu alone in the cacophony of the alarms and the ruined control room, holding in her hands the horrifying truth of a world far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. She was shaken, but also ignited, a spark of revolutionary determination kindled by the encounter. Her partnership with Naruto had just begun. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Urban Symphony and the Silent Observer. The city of Musudafu, perpetually cloaked in a restless energy, throbbed with a different rhythm tonight. Not the raw power of a storm, nor the sterile hum of a hidden laboratory, but the vibrant, pulsating heartbeat of its entertainment district. Neon signs, blindingly bright and garishly colorful, bled their light onto rain-slicked pavement, reflecting in distorted, shimmering puddles like melted jewels. The air, thick with the scent of fried street food, stale cigarette smoke, and the faint, sweet perfume of blossoming night jasmine, hummed with 1,000 overlapping conversations. The blare of music from countless establishments, and the incessant, high-pitched whir of public transit. It was a chaotic, beautiful symphony of urban life, and Naruto Uzumaki, a figure of quiet intent amidst the pandemonium, moved through it all like a discordant note-seeking harmony. He was a shadow among shadows, his presence so subtly altered by his Maelstrom quirk that he seemed to simply exist on the periphery of perception. His gait was casual, almost languid, but his eyes, now a more subdued cerulean, missed nothing. He wasn't relying on brute force or overt displays of power here. His quirk flowed as an ambient field around him, a delicate sensor array that filtered the overwhelming sensory input, allowing him to perceive the minute shifts in air pressure caused by a hidden camera lens, the faint electromagnetic pulses of covert listening devices, and the almost imperceptible vibrations of a whispered conversation from blocks away. His target, tonight, was an elusive information network known only as the Echo Collective. Momo Yaoyorozu's meticulous decryption of the Chrysalis project data had yielded a crucial lead, a series of untraceable transactions linked to a discrete black market specializing in quirk-enhancing narcotics and stolen technologies. The Echo Collective was rumored to be its primary distribution and intelligence arm. A shadowy organization that thrived in the chaotic anonymity of the urban sprawl, their members specializing in sensory manipulation and deceptive quirks. They were the eyes and ears of the underworld, and Naruto needed to blind them. He navigated the throng, a silent eddy in a human current. He passed a street magician whose illusion quirk conjured shimmering, impossible doves from thin air, street musician whose vocal warp quirk made her voice echo like a chorus of angels, and a group of exuberant revelers whose joy spore quirk filled the air with infectious, if slightly unnerving, euphoria. This was a city where quirks weren't just for heroes and villains, they were woven into the very fabric of daily life, a testament to humanity's adaptability. Naruto's focus, however, was on the discordant notes in this urban symphony. He felt the subtle, unnatural tremor of a hidden vibration quirk user transmitting data beneath a bustling noodle stand. He tasted the faint metallic tang of a pheromone quirk user attempting to influence the crowd's flow near a casino entrance. He followed these anomalies, a predator tracking subtle scents in a dense forest. He rounded a corner, stepping into a narrower, dimmer alleyway that smelled of stale beer and desperation. Here, the neon glow softened, replaced by the sickly yellow light of a single flickering fluorescent bulb. 3 figures, cloaked and hooded, huddled in the shadows. Their voices low, their movements furtive. Naruto slowed his pace, blending into the deeper gloom. His Maelstrom quirk expanded, focusing on their conversation. He didn't just hear the words. He felt the subtle vibrations in the air as they formed, discerning their individual speech patterns, the nervous ticks in their vocal cords. "Data packet from Sector Gamma is hot," one rasped. His voice rough, likely due to a vocal scrambler quirk meant to distort his identity. "High-level stuff. Clients paying a premium for untraceable delivery. Careful with this one," another. A woman with a deceptively soft voice cautioned. "Heard whispers about the Chrysalis project. That entire facility went dark. Someone powerful is poking around." Her voice had a strange, almost ethereal quality. A sign of her sound camouflage quirk, meant to make her words blend seamlessly into ambient noise. "Relax," whisper. The third, a bulky man whose presence seemed to subtly absorb ambient light, responded. "Our network's airtight. No one gets in without an invite. No one finds us if we don't want to be found." Naruto's lips twitched. Amateurs, he thought again, a recurring theme. His maelstrom resonated, not just perceiving, but actively analyzing the energy signatures of their quirks. Vocal scrambler, sound camouflage, light absorption. All designed for stealth and deception. Challenging, but not impossible. He took another step, a mere footfall, but he subtly altered the gravitational field around his shoe, deadening the sound completely. He was close enough now. "I disagree," Naruto said, his voice cutting through the alley's oppressive quiet, clear and resonant despite the surrounding city din. "Some invitations are merely implied, and some shadows are meant to be illuminated." The 3 Echo Collective members reacted with startled jumps, their hidden quirks flaring momentarily as they instinctively prepared for evasive action or attack. Light absorption flickered, revealing his burly form for a fraction of a second. Whisper's voice gained an almost imperceptible static, a sign of her scrambling. Vocal scrambler hissed, pulling a concealed energy pistol. "Who the hell are you?" Vocal scrambler snarled, his voice a guttural mess. "Someone who's just audited your little exchange," Naruto replied, his tone calm, almost conversational. "And I'm afraid your books don't balance. Specifically, the part where you're trading in illegally acquired quirk research." Vocal scrambler fired, a concentrated blast of concussive energy. Naruto didn't move. He allowed the energy to wash over him, his maelstrom quirk seamlessly absorbing the kinetic force. The blast dissipated against his invisible field, barely ruffling his clothes. "Is that all?" Naruto asked, tilting his head slightly. "For a high-level exchange, I expected more bang for my buck." Whisper, the woman with sound camouflage, reacted with more cunning. She didn't attack directly. Instead, A wave of auditory distortion washed over the alley, designed to disorient, to make Naruto's own ears ring with conflicting frequencies, to mask her partner's movements. The chaotic soundscape was nauseating, disorienting. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment, letting the wave wash over him. His maelstrom adapted. He didn't just hear. He felt the vibrations. He separated the true sounds from the false, pinpointing the subtle, unique energetic signature of Whisper's quirk. He then unleashed a counter wave, not of sound, but of anti-frequency resonance. The auditory distortion slammed back into Whisper with crippling force, canceling out her own quirk's effect and overloading her senses. She cried out, clutching her ears, blood trickling from them as her own power backfired. Light absorption. The burly man, seeing his allies incapacitated, attempted to vanish. His quirk allowed him to absorb ambient light, rendering him virtually invisible in the dimness. He faded, becoming a shimmering, almost translucent outline. "Don't bother," Naruto said, his voice cutting through the remaining sonic chaos. He extended his hand, not towards the man, but towards the air directly in front of him. A concentrated maelstrom of pure light, contained within a sphere the size of a marble, flickered into existence. It wasn't a destructive blast. It was a beacon. The intense, focused light, generated by a manipulation of thermal and electromagnetic energies, pierced through light absorption's quirk, oversaturating his light absorption cells. The man screamed as his invisibility shattered, his eyes burning from the sudden, intense light. He stumbled back, clawing at his face, temporarily blinded. Naruto walked calmly towards Vocal Scrambler, who was still fumbling with his useless energy pistol. He stopped before him, leaning down. "The data packet," he said, his voice a low command. "Where is it going?" Vocal Scrambler, shaking with fear, stammered, his voice still a garbled mess. Can't reveal, network, protocols." Naruto sighed. "Fine, we'll do this the hard way." He gently touched Vocal Scrambler's head, just above the temple. His maelstrom quirk flowed, not as a destructive force, but as a subtle neurological current. It wasn't mind reading. It was a precise, controlled manipulation of neural pathways, forcing a specific memory to surface, to be brought to the forefront of the villain's consciousness. The villain's eyes glazed over, then widened in a sudden, involuntary spasm. His mouth opened, and the words tumbled out, clear and unscrambled, devoid of his quirk's distortion. The Crimson Echo, a club, in the Red Lantern District, delivery to a man named the Conductor. Naruto nodded, withdrawing his hand. The villain slumped, unconscious. "Thank you for your cooperation." Quote. He looked at the three unconscious figures. He hadn't harmed them permanently, merely disabled their quirks and senses temporarily. It was a testament to the precision of Maelstrom when wielded by a master. Just as he was about to leave the alley, a sound cut through the lingering echoes of the fight. It wasn't the city's chaotic hum. It was a sharp, clear chord, struck with surprising force and precision. And it was coming from the mouth of the alley. Kyoka Jiro stood at the alley's entrance, one of her earphone jacks plugged into a small, portable speaker, her other jack extended, twitching, like an antenna. Her expression was a mixture of annoyance and intense curiosity. She had been on her way to an open mic night at a small, independent club just down the street, hoping to unwind and perhaps test out some new material. But the sudden, violent sonic disruption had jolted her. Her earphone jack quirk, usually attuned to subtle sounds and vibrations, had been painfully overloaded by Whisper's counter wave. She'd felt the feedback, then the subsequent, precise anti-frequency that had silenced it. And then, she'd heard the subtle, almost undetectable energies that followed. Well, Jiro drawled, her voice a low, sardonic purr, completely distinct from the cacophony around them. "Looks like someone had a little party without an invitation." Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, swept over the unconscious figures, then landed squarely on Naruto. She recognized him instantly from the news reports and public chatter, the unknown quirk user from the industrial district, the one Mirko had reportedly gone head-to-head with. "So, you're the Maelstrom guy, huh? Heard you caused quite a ruckus with the rabbit hero. Didn't realize you also moonlighted as a cleanup crew for black market thugs." Naruto turned, his posture relaxed, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. And you, I presume, are a connoisseur of fine auditory anomalies. Or perhaps a local hero on a late-night patrol. His eyes flickered to her earphone jacks, a subtle spark of recognition. He'd sensed her quirk's activity, albeit from a distance. Neither, really, Jiro countered, leaning against the alley wall, arms crossed, her eyes never leaving him. Her speaking style was dry, witty, and laden with subtext. Just a musician with a finely tuned ear, who just had her eardrums assaulted by some amateur sonic warfare. And then, surprisingly, a counter wave that was almost elegant in its precision. That was you, wasn't it? Credit where credit is due, Naruto conceded. A flicker of genuine appreciation in his eyes. You have excellent hearing, and an impressive quirk to match. Most would have just run screaming. Most people weren't stupid enough to walk into an alley where a fight just happened, either, Jiro retorted, a cynical edge to her voice. But you clearly aren't, most people. So, what's the deal, Maelstrom? This isn't exactly hero work. Roughing up petty criminals for fun. Petty criminals are but symptoms of a deeper ailment, Naruto stated, his gaze meeting hers, serious now. And sometimes, the best way to treat a symptom is to cut off its supply chain. These thugs were dealing in illegally mutated quirks and dangerous technologies. The kind that ends up hurting a lot of innocent people. Jiro's expression softened imperceptibly. She might be cynical, but her sense of justice ran deep. So, vigilante, then, or just a really effective freelance problem solver. Labels are for those who need to categorize what they don't understand. Naruto said, I simply do what needs to be done. And sometimes, what needs to be done requires a certain directness that the official channels aren't equipped for. Directness, huh? Jiro scoffed, a faint smile playing on her lips. I prefer subtlety. And frankly, your idea of subtlety usually involves leveling buildings or short-circuiting brains. She gestured vaguely at the unconscious villains. My applications of Maelstrom are as varied as the forces it commands, Naruto countered, a hint of challenge in his voice. From localized temporal flux to a precise neurological pulse. It simply depends on the desired outcome. And your own quirk, I suspect, is far more versatile than mere hearing. I felt the delicate resonance you projected. An amplifier, a disruptor, a conduit. Jiro's eyes widened slightly in surprise. Very few people truly understood the nuances of her quirk. You can tell that from just a ripple in the air. My quirk processes energy signatures. Vibrations, forces, Naruto explained, a subtle educational tone entering his voice. Your quirk allows you to channel and direct sound, yes. But sound is merely a form of kinetic energy, of vibration. You are essentially a master of localized kinetic resonance. You could use it to create concussive blasts, yes. But also to manipulate specific frequencies, to dismantle internal structures, to create vibrational shields, or even, to detect the most minute, almost imperceptible shifts in air pressure, in electromagnetic fields. To perceive the unseen. Jiro stared at him, fascinated. He was describing applications of her own quirk that she had only ever theorized, or perhaps subconsciously sensed without fully articulating. He wasn't just observing her, he was understanding her quirk on a fundamental level she rarely encountered. It was unsettling, but also incredibly compelling. That's a lot of theory for a freelance problem solver, Jiro said, her voice softer, less sarcastic. So, you just cruise around, giving lectures on quirk mechanics after beating up bad guys. Only when a willing and capable listener presents themselves, Naruto replied, his gaze holding hers. You have a gift for perception, Jiro. A gift that, when fully refined, could be invaluable. Not just in combat, but in gathering intelligence, in discerning truth from deception. Something tells me you already use it for more than just music. Jiro's poker face faltered for a second. He was right. Her hobby of music was often a cover for her uncanny ability to pick up on conversations. On the subtle shifts in someone's heartbeat that indicated a lie, on the faint tremors of hidden devices. She sometimes helped underground activists or even heroes with discreet intel gathering, operating in the shadows. Just like him. All right, Maelstrom, Jiro conceded, a rare, genuine smile touching her lips, a spark of camaraderie. "You've got my attention. What's your next move? And don't tell me it's more." Tidying up, a gang of glorified street thugs. "The conductor," Naruto stated, his voice now crisp, business-like. "He's the next link in the chain. Operates out of a club called the Crimson Echo, in the Red Lantern District. He's the central hub for the Echo Collective's most sensitive information. And given the nature of the data they were transmitting, I susp. He's connected to something much larger than just illegal quirk sales." Jiro's eyes narrowed. "The conductor. I've heard whispers about him. Elusive, smart, very paranoid, and always surrounded by a network of sound and light manipulators. Getting to him is like walking into a black hole of sensory overload." "Precisely," Naruto affirmed, "which is why direct confrontation is inefficient. It requires a delicate touch, a different kind of infiltration, one that relies on perception, on understanding the nuances of their sensory deception. One that could use a guide who truly understands the urban symphony." He looked at her, a silent invitation in his eyes. Jiro met his gaze. The thought of helping an unregistered, dangerous, yet undeniably effective operative went against everything she'd been taught. But the idea of uncovering a deeper conspiracy, and the challenge of working with someone who saw her quirk's true potential, was too intriguing to resist. Besides, he hadn't asked her to fight. He'd asked her to perceive. The Crimson Echo is a notorious den of iniquity, Jiro mused, feigning reluctance, though a thrill was already coursing through her. Full of noise, lies, and a whole lot of bad music. "Not my usual scene." Naruto's smirk returned. "Perhaps you can teach them a thing or two about harmony." Jiro chuckled, a low, dry sound. "Maybe, but if I'm your guide, you owe me. Big time. And I expect better music than whatever cacophony those thugs were making." "Agreed," Naruto said, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "And perhaps, an explanation of how a talented musician found herself so attuned to the whispers of the underworld." Jiro raised an eyebrow, a silent challenge. "One secret for another, Maelstrom. Seems fair, wouldn't you say?" "Fair," Naruto conceded. For now, he turned to leave the alley, but this time, he didn't disappear. He simply walked, his presence subtly muted, but now accompanied by the distinct, confident stride of Kyoka Jiro. The chaotic symphony of the city enveloped them, a prelude to the intricate dance of deception and perception that lay ahead. A new, unlikely alliance had been forged in the heart of the urban night, bound by shared purpose and a mutual appreciation for hidden depths. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. Legacy of Fire, Echoes of Ice. The air itself felt different here. Not thick with urban grit or the tang of ozone, but crisp, rarefied. Carrying the faint, clean scent of pine and distant snow. The Todoroki estate, nestled in a secluded valley shrouded by ancient, meticulously manicured forests, was less a residence and more a bastion of tradition. Its sprawling grounds, bordered by towering, ice-kissed walls that seemed to absorb the very light, radiated an austere power. Grand, elegant structures of dark wood and pale stone, with their sweeping, traditional roofs, stood in quiet defiance of the modern world, each tile and beam steeped in generations of history, influence, and unspoken burdens. Naruto Uzumaki, for once, was not infiltrating. He arrived in a high-end, discreetly armored vehicle, a concession to the social protocols of this realm. His attire, while still practical, was tailored, understated, designed to blend into the upper echelons of society rather than stand out. He moved with the same fluid confidence, but now it was a social grace, a subtle command of presence that drew eyes without demanding attention. His invitation was a carefully orchestrated maneuver, a chess piece moved across a board invisible to most. The data retrieved from the Chrysalis project and deciphered by Momo, combined with the intelligence gleaned from the Echo Collective by Jiro, had revealed a disturbing nexus. The Todoroki family, with their ancient lineage and powerful, elemental quirks, held more than just political sway. Their vast financial network and covert connections touched upon the very fringes of the primal resonance research, not as direct perpetrators but as unwitting financiers or long-term facilitators through layers of shell corporations and blind trusts. Naruto wasn't here to expose them violently, he was here to understand, to observe, and to subtly probe the hidden cracks in their formidable facade. The atmosphere within the estate was one of rigid, almost suffocating formality. Servants moved with hushed reverence, their footsteps barely disturbing the immaculate tatami mats. The silence was punctuated only by the distant, rhythmic clang of a training hall and the murmur of polite, guarded conversation. Every interaction felt like a veiled negotiation, every glance held a hidden meaning. It was a gilded cage, and Naruto felt its invisible bars pressing in. He was introduced as a representative of a rapidly expanding, independent security consultant. Psi Firm, a front he had meticulously constructed with Jiro's network and Momo's data analysis. His cover was flawless, his backstory meticulously crafted, painting him as a rising star in the global security sector. Specializing in quirk-related threats, it gave him an excuse to be here, to observe the powerful figures gathered for what was ostensibly a private, high-level business summit disguised as a traditional tea ceremony. He sat cross-legged on a silken cushion in a vast, traditional reception room, observing the delicate dance of social hierarchy unfold. The air was thick with the scent of roasted green tea and the subtle, expensive perfumes of the elite. Every gesture, every nuance of speech, was carefully modulated. It was a world entirely alien to the raw, visceral combat he usually engaged in. Yet Naruto navigated it with the same strategic acumen. He used his Maelstrom quirk, not for power, but for enhanced perception, reading the subtle shifts in body language, the micro expressions that betrayed hidden agendas, the minute vibrations in the air that indicated a lie, or an unspoken truth. His eyes scanned the room, noting the subtle power dynamics. Here was a hero commission liaison, stiff and unyielding. There, a representative from a powerful quirk tech conglomerate, whose smile didn't reach his eyes. And everywhere, members of the Todoroki family, their presence radiating a quiet, almost cold authority. Suddenly, a presence on the periphery of the room caught his attention. She stood near a delicate shoji screen, her posture almost withdrawn, yet her presence resonated with a profound, quiet strength. Her hair, a striking mix of white and crimson, was pulled back simply. Her eyes, a soft gray, held a depth of sorrow and resilience that immediately drew Naruto's gaze. It was Rei Todoroki, the mother of Endeavor's children, famously reclusive, rarely seen in public. He knew her tragic story, the immense suffering she had endured. Her aura, though subdued, hummed with a delicate, almost ethereal resonance, a faint echo of the elemental power of her family, yet entirely her own. He felt an inexplicable pull towards her, a subtle, empathetic connectee. On through the ambient energy of his maelstrom. This wasn't a strategic move, it was an instinctive recognition of profound pain and a desire to offer solace, however brief. Before he could act, however, a booming, flamboyant laugh erupted from across the room, cutting through the refined murmurs. "Oh, this is rich. All this prim and proper bowing and scraping for some fancy tea. Give me a real drink." The voice belonged to Mitsuki Bakugo. She strode into the room, a whirlwind of vibrant personality that clashed gloriously with the room's hushed reverence. Dressed in a striking, slightly out-of-season kimono that gleamed with bold patterns, she was a force of nature. Her golden blonde hair was as wild and untamed as a lion's mane, her crimson eyes sparkled with a sharp, intelligent wit and an unapologetic fire. She commanded attention effortlessly, not through power displays, but through sheer, unbridled charisma. She was everything the Todoroki estate was not: loud, direct, unapologetically passionate. Naruto felt a smile bloom on his face. She was a breath of fresh air, a glorious disruption. He knew of her, of course, as the mother of the infamous hero in training, Katsuki Bakugo. Her quirk, glycerin, while seemingly mundane, was the source of her son's explosive power. But seeing her in person, her aura, her very presence, spoke of a raw, untamed spirit that resonated deeply with his own. She was a firecracker, a woman who lived fully, without pretense. Mitsuki immediately caught sight of Naruto. Her eyes narrowed in appraisal, a flicker of surprise and interest in their depths. He was new, he was interesting, and he clearly didn't belong to the usual flock of sycophants she encountered at these events. She made a beeline for him, her movements confident and direct, passing a startled hero commission official. "Well, hello there, handsome," Mitsuki purred, stopping directly in front of him, her voice a low, husky growl that was both challenging and inviting. She didn't mince words, nor did she care for social niceties. "You're not one of these stuffy old fossils, are you? You actually look like you've seen a real fight, not just a spreadsheet." She gestured derisively at the other attendees. Naruto's smile widened. He appreciated her directness. "Only when necessary, ma'am. And I assure you, my spreadsheets are far more exciting than most." He met her gaze, his own eyes sparkling with amusement and a subtle challenge. "Naruto Uzumaki. And you, I presume, are the legendary Mitsuki Bakugo. Your reputation for spirited candor precedes you." Mitsuki barked a laugh, a genuine, uninhibited sound that made several heads turn. "Legendary. Ha, more like, not afraid to call a spade. And, spirited candor, that's a fancy way of saying I don't sugarcoat my opinions." She leaned in conspiratorially. "So, Uzumaki, what brings a refreshing change like you to this mausoleum of ancient power?" "An unfortunate business obligation, mostly," Naruto replied, his voice dropping slightly. "A shared secret, and a desire to understand the intricate workings of, well, let's call it, legacy-based influence." He subtly gestured around the room. Mitsuki nodded, her eyes twinkling. "Legacy-based influence. I like that. More polite than old money clinging to power like a scared badger." "So, you're not just some hero wannabe, then? Or a villain in a fancy suit?" Her tone was teasing, but her eyes were sharp, assessing. "Neither," Naruto said, his gaze unwavering. "I'm simply someone who recognizes power, in all its forms. And how it's wielded. Or, in some cases, how it stagnates." He met her challenging gaze with his own, unyielding confidence. Mitsuki's smile deepened, a flicker of genuine interest in her eyes. "Oh, I like you, Uzumaki. You've got guts, and a dangerous glint in your eye. Much more interesting than all these preening peacocks." She clapped him on the shoulder, a surprisingly firm touch. "Come on, let's find a real drink. This tea is an insult to the palate." Naruto, still observing the room, including the subtly watching Rei Todoroki, allowed himself to be led by Mitsuki. She was a force, a delightful distraction, and perhaps a useful ally in navigating this complex social landscape. Their banter was sharp, witty, and filled with an underlying current of mutual challenge and respect. He found her bluntness refreshing, her fire exhilarating. He was drawn to her fierce independence and her genuine lack of artifice. She was utterly herself, and he found that incredibly attractive. As they moved, he subtly angled his head, catching a glimpse of Rei. She was still watching him, a ghost of a smile on her face, a hint of something almost like approval in her soft eyes. She had seen through his formal facade, sensed his underlying purpose, and perhaps recognized the kindred spirit he had sensed in her. The real drink turned out to be a clandestine bottle of high-grade sake Mitsuki had liberated from a private family cellar. They found themselves in a secluded, moonlit traditional garden, the air cool and crisp, the scent of night-blooming flowers mingling with the sharp aroma of sake. "So, Uzumaki," Mitsuki said, pouring generously into 2 ceramic cups. "You're a man of mystery. I like that, but what kind of security consultant manages to get Mirko, the rabbit hero, to back off after a city-shattering brawl? Heard that little rumor. The commission tried to squash it, but you can't keep a good brawl down." Her eyes twinkled with genuine amusement and a hint of something predatory. Naruto chuckled, swirling the sake in his cup. "Mirko and I simply had a difference of opinion regarding property damage. And a mutual respect for a well-matched challenge." He took a sip. The sake was surprisingly smooth. "She's direct. I appreciate that. Direct. My ass. She's a wild animal," Mitsuki scoffed playfully. "But a fun one, I'll admit. You must be something else to make her pause. My son, Katsuki, probably would have just tried to blow her up." A flicker of motherly pride, mixed with exasperation, crossed her face. "Your son has considerable power," Naruto acknowledged. "But power without understanding of its nuances can be inefficient." Mitsuki raised an eyebrow. "Nuances? You mean like not punching Endeavor in the face for being a loudmouth?" She paused, then leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "So, what's your real game, Uzumaki? You're too sharp, too confident, too dangerous for just security consultation. Naruto met her gaze, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then a hint of vulnerability, rare and potent, entered his eyes. My game, as you put it, is to understand a legacy that has shaped my own existence, and to prevent it from shaping the world in ways that are fundamentally destructive. It involves powers far older, far more insidious than most realize. Powers that even this venerable estate, with all its history, is unwittingly connected to. Mitsuki's sharp eyes detected the shift in his tone, the unusual gravity behind his words. She sensed he was hinting at something truly profound, something that transcended the usual hero-villain dynamic. Her own family, the Bakugos, while prosperous and respected, also had their own complex history, and she understood the weight of legacy. Insidious, she mused, taking a long sip of sake. Sounds like fun, or a royal pain in the ass. Which is it? Both, Naruto replied, a faint, weary smile touching his lips. It involves a power known as All for One, and a deeper secret, connected to my own quirk, Maelstrom, which I am only just beginning to truly understand. He spoke with a quiet intensity that was far more captivating than any boasting. Mitsuki's eyes widened, a flicker of genuine shock. All for One. That name carried immense weight, even in the shadows of the underworld. She didn't press him immediately. Instead, she simply nodded, her gaze thoughtful. Well, if you're chasing after that kind of trouble, Uzumaki, you'll need more than just spreadsheets. You'll need allies who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty, or to talk some sense into the stubborn ones. She clinked her cup against his. To necessary disruption. To necessary disruption, Naruto echoed, clinking his cup back. Their conversation flowed, from witty banter to surprisingly deep discussions about power, legacy, family, and the hypocrisy of society. Mitsuki found herself drawn not just to his undeniable strength and charisma, but to his sharp intellect and the unexpected glimpses of his profound sense of purpose. He saw through her bluntness to the keen mind and fierce loyalty beneath. And he treated her not as a hero's mother, but as a formidable, intelligent woman in her own right. As the night deepened, a figure emerged from the shadowy corridors of the estate, moving with a quiet grace. It was Rei Todoroki. She approached them, her footsteps almost silent on the gravel path. Mitsuki-san, Rei said, her voice soft, ethereal, yet clear. Her eyes, however, were fixed on Naruto. I apologize for the intrusion. I merely wished to offer my gratitude, and perhaps a different perspective. Mitsuki, surprisingly, sensed the shift in atmosphere. Rei-chan, don't be a stranger. Come, join us. Uzumaki here is full of fascinating, if slightly dangerous, theories. She poured another cup of sake, offering it to Rei. Rei accepted the cup, her fingers brushing Naruto's as he subtly guided it to her. Their brief touch lingered, a spark of unspoken understanding passing between them. Naruto-san, Rei began, her gaze unwavering. I sensed a profound stillness within you earlier. Even amidst the chaos of this summit. A quiet strength. Her voice held a note of profound empathy. And I have observed the changes you bring. The questions you pose. My family, our history, it is steeped in fire. But there is also ice. And sometimes, the ice, it holds more secrets than the flame. Naruto met her gaze, his expression softening completely. This was not a challenge, nor a social maneuver. This was a soul-to-soul connection. The ice preserves, Lady Rei. And sometimes, the coldest truths are the most vital. He spoke to her with a gentleness that would have shocked Mirko, a profound respect for her quiet resilience. Indeed, Rei murmured, her eyes holding his. And some truths, when revealed, can melt the deepest frosts. The quirk research you were investigating, some of it, I believe, has roots in older texts, ancient knowledge passed down through generations within certain families. Knowledge that has been perverted. My own quirk, it has a natural affinity for elemental energies, a sensitivity beyond mere temperature control. I have always felt a resonance with the fundamental forces of the world. Perhaps, it is similar to your Maelstrom. Naruto's eyes flared with sudden interest. This was a breakthrough, a direct, intuitive connection to the very nature of quirks, separate from the scientific data. A resonance, he repeated, the words tasting significant. Tell me more, Lady Ray. Anything. Not here, Ray whispered, glancing around. Her face momentarily clouded with a shadow of her past. Not now. But, if you seek true understanding, if you wish to find the threads of this ancient power, seek out the hidden spring beneath the oldest willow tree in the moonlit garden. Come alone, at dawn. There are things that only the ice remembers. Mitsuki, observing the quiet intensity between them, poured herself another cup of sake. She understood the subtext. This wasn't just a casual meeting. This was a transfer of crucial, perhaps dangerous, information. And a new, intriguing dynamic was forming. Ray, the quiet, suffering queen, drawn to Naruto's quiet strength and empathy. Mitsuki, the fiery, direct force, drawn to his raw power and unshakable confidence. Naruto, the enigmatic core, capable of bridging these vastly different worlds. The conversation shifted, more relaxed, yet charged with new possibilities. Mitsuki's laughter mingled with Rei's soft murmurs, and Naruto's confident voice provided the anchor. The night was a canvas for alliances forming, for secrets exchanged, and for the quiet blossoming of unexpected connections, all under the watchful, ancient gaze of the Todoroki estate. As dawn approached, painting the distant mountains in hues of pale pink and gold, Naruto rose. The sake was warm in his veins, the insights sharper in his mind. He looked at Mitsuki, her eyes bright with unspent energy, and then at Rei, her face serene. But a spark of new hope glimmering in her eyes. Thank you both, Naruto said, his voice sincere. This night has been illuminating. Don't be a stranger, Uzumaki, Mitsuki grinned, a bold, inviting challenge in her eyes. You clearly know how to make a party interesting. And you owe me a proper sparring match. One where we can really let loose. Perhaps, Naruto smiled, his gaze lingering on her for a moment, appreciating her raw, untamed spirit. He then turned to Rei, bowing slightly. Lady Rei, your courage and insight are a beacon. I will be there. Rei simply nodded, a faint, almost ethereal smile on her lips. The ice remembers, Naruto-san. And so, too, does the spring. Naruto left the Todoroki estate as the first rays of sunlight touched its ancient walls, carrying with him not just new leads, but a deeper understanding of the human heart, and two very different, very powerful women whose paths had now inextricably intertwined with his own. The political and social intrigue had yielded not just information, but the beginnings of profound connections. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. Whispers of the Abyss, Fury of the Huntress. The air was a caustic bite of sulfur and ash, tasting like the very breath of a dying world. Under a sky perpetually bruised by a choking haze, the desolate expanse of Mount Cinder, a long-dormant volcanic island now scarred by human folly, stretched out in grim invitation. Twisted, skeletal structures of reinforced concrete, once part of a top-secret research facility, jutted from the blackened earth like broken teeth, ravaged by explosions and the corrosive touch of forgotten experiments. Even the hardy, mutated flora that clung to the cracked rock face seemed to scream a silent agony. This was a place where despair had seeped into the very ground. And Naruto Uzumaki felt its oppressive weight, a chilling counterpoint to the vibrant life he normally sought. His intelligence, a complex tapestry woven from Momo's deciphered data, Jiro's urban network, and Rei's cryptic insights, had pointed unequivocally to Mount Cinder. It was a former all-for-one hideout, a grim testament to his earliest, most horrifying quirk experiments. Specifically those related to forced quirk singularity, and the dark echoes of the primal resonance. Rumors whispered of lingering horrors, of failed biological weapons and twisted quirk mutants, left to rot in the volcanic wastes. Naruto was here to confirm those rumors, to cleanse the remnants, and to cut off any remaining tendrils of AFO's dark legacy. He moved through the blighted landscape with a grim determination, his Maelstrom quirk flowing around him like an active shield, not for defense, but for heightened sensory input. He felt the minute tremors of unstable ground, the barely perceptible shifts in air currents that hinted at a pressure plate, the faint, sickening pulse of residual quirk energy radiating from deep within the earth. His senses were alive, sharpened to an almost painful degree. The sulphurous fumes, the biting wind, the unnatural silence punctuated only by the distant groans of the island itself, it all resonated with the destructive potential of his own power. A symphony of desolation. He descended into the gaping maw of a partially collapsed underground complex, the entrance a jagged hole blasted into the volcanic rock. Inside, the darkness was absolute, heavy with the scent of stagnant water and something unpleasantly organic, something that spoke of decay and unnatural life. He didn't need light. His Maelstrom-enhanced vision perceived the world not through photons, but through energy signatures, mapping the intricate network of tunnels, collapsed sections, and hidden pathways as if illuminated by an invisible sun. The deeper he went, the more evident the horrors became. Rusting containment cells, some still eerily intact, others violently burst open, hinted at their former occupants. Faint, desperate scrawls covered some walls, chilling cries for help. Terrifying descriptions of forced mutations, all in the shaky hand of former test subjects. The air grew heavier, warmer, pulsating with a disturbing, erratic rhythm. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl echoed from the darkness ahead. It wasn't human. It was something monstrous, something forged in pain and twisted by perverse science. Naruto's posture tightened, his senses pinpointing the source. Not one, several, and they were moving, fast. The first of them lunged from the shadows, a grotesque, humanoid figure, its skin a mottled gray, riddled with bone-like protrusions. Its limbs were disproportionately long, tipped with razor-sharp claws, and its head was a featureless mass, save for a gaping maw filled with needle teeth. Its quirk, bio-acid secretion, was evident in the dripping, corrosive saliva that hissed on the ground. Naruto didn't hesitate. This wasn't a thinking opponent. It was a byproduct of depravity, a creature of agony. He unleashed a focused kinetic blast from his palm. Not to kill, but to utterly incapacitate. The force slammed into the creature, not just throwing it back, but vibrating through its grotesque form, causing its bone structures to crack. Its bio-acid sacs to rupture internally. It shrieked, a sound of pure agony, and collapsed, writhing, its own quirk consuming it. 3 more emerged, faster, larger, their quirks ranging from spiked armor to sonic shriek. They moved with unnatural coordination, a horrifying legacy of their forced evolution. Naruto met them. His movements were a blur of lethal efficiency. Against spiked armor, he used a precise gravitational manipulation, increasing the density of the creature's own armor, causing it to stumble under its own immense weight, then delivering a strike that vibrated through its form, rupturing its internal organs. Against sonic shriek, he erected an invisible anti-frequency shield, redirecting its devastating sonic attack back upon itself, forcing it to collapse in agony. This was not a demonstration of finesse, but of utter, overwhelming force. Naruto was a maelstrom of controlled destruction, his every movement a surgical application of immense power. He wasn't just defeating them. He was dismantling their quirks, destroying the very principles that held them together. The horrors of this place fueled a cold, righteous fury within him. He was out to engage the last 2 when his heightened senses picked up something else. 2 distinct, powerful energy signatures, rapidly converging on his position from above ground. One, a vibrant, explosive energy. The other, a subtle, resonant frequency. Before he could react, a section of the cavern ceiling above him exploded inward with concussive force, sending dust and rock shards raining down. Thought I smelled something rotting. But it's just more of this crap. A familiar, powerful voice roared. Mirko. She dropped from the gaping hole, landing in a spray of debris, her white leotard already smudged with grime. Her crimson eyes blazing, she saw the grotesque mutants, the destruction, and Naruto in the thick of it. Her presence was a surge of raw, untamed power, a welcome burst of untainted fury in the oppressive gloom. Rabbit, Naruto acknowledged, a hint of something almost like relief in his voice. Decided to join the party, have we? Don't flatter yourself, pretty boy. Mirko retorted, already lunging. A powerful Luna kick obliterating one of the remaining mutants with a single, bone-shattering blow. My spider senses were tingling, and where there's unusual energy and creepy monsters, you're usually not far behind. Thought I'd make sure you weren't actually trying to join the monsters. She spun, her powerful legs a blur, tearing through the remaining mutant with brutal efficiency. Behind her, dropping through the same opening with a much quieter, almost calculated grace, was Kyokujiro. She landed lightly, her earphone jacks already plugged into a small, advanced sonic amplifier on her belt. Her eyes swept the cavern, taking in the scene with a sharp, analytical gaze. "Took you long enough, Jiro," Mirko grunted, wiping a streak of mutant ichor from her arm. Quote, "Place smells like a dumpster fire and a biology lab had an ugly baby. I was busy mapping the underground network and scanning for residual quirk signatures," Jiro retorted, her voice dry, but a tremor of unease was evident. She played a quick chord on her guitar pick-shaped device. A low, pulsating sonic wave propagated through the cavern, mapping its intricate structure in her mind's eye. And the readings here are off the charts. High-level bio-mutation, residual AFO energy. Something's been active here very recently. Precisely, Naruto affirmed, nodding at Jiro. They're trying to react. I've at the Chrysalis project, from a secondary location. A splinter group, perhaps, loyal to AFO's deeper ambitions. Or just opportunists trying to harness the primal resonance they detected. Either way, they've been using these abominations as guardians. And they're not just bio-weapons. They're absorbing environmental quirk energy to grow stronger. Absorbing what? Mirko snarled, her ears flattening. This place is a nightmare. How many more of these things? Jiro's eyes, focused on her internal sonic map, widened slightly. More. A lot more. And, deeper down, there's a central chamber, massive energy spike. And, other signatures. Not just mutants. Something human. Highly trained. They're guarding the core, Naruto stated, his gaze sharpening. The nexus where the AFO's experiments touched upon the primal source. They're trying to stabilize it, to control it. And they'll use anything to stop us. They moved as an unlikely, yet incredibly effective, trio. Mirko, the untamed force. Clearing pathways with devastating blows, her every kick a sonic boom. Jiro, the silent observer, constantly feeding tactical information to both Naruto and Mirko, her sonic senses piercing through the darkness. Detecting hidden traps, weak points in the structures, and the approach of new threats. And Naruto, the silent anchor, weaving through the chaos, using his Maelstrom to subtly enhance their movements. To disrupt enemy quirks before they could fully activate, and to deliver precise, debilitating blows to the larger, more powerful mutants that even Mirko couldn't completely shatter on her own. They encountered automated defense systems, relics of AFO's past, designed to defend against heroes. Lasers, flamethrowers, concussive blasters. Mirko simply kicked through them, a white blur of destruction. Jiro provided the crucial intel, warning her of the type of energy output, allowing Mirko to position herself for optimal impact. Naruto, however, often bypassed them entirely, or subtly reversed their polarity with Maelstrom, causing them to fire wildly, hitting their own forces. They faced more of the mutated creatures, larger, more resilient, some with terrifying new abilities born from forced evolution. 1. A hulking beast whose skin shimmered with a reflective barrier quirk, proved impervious to Mirko's direct attacks. Damn things deflecting everything, Mirko roared, frustrated, her fist recoiling from an invisible wall. Not everything, Jiro calmly stated, her earphone jack pulsing. It's a frequency-specific reflection. And its internal organs vibrate at a different rate. She looked at Naruto. Can you hit an internal frequency without external impact? With precision, Naruto confirmed. He extended his hand, not striking the monster, but simply touching the air before it. A micro-maelstrom of resonant frequency erupted, vibrating at the precise rate to bypass the reflective barrier and resonate with the monster's internal organs. The creature bellowed, its skin rippling violently. Then collapsed, convulsing as its inner structure vibrated apart. Nice. Mirko grinned, a feral flash of appreciation. Teamwork makes the dream work, huh? More like tactical synergy. Jiro corrected dryly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile on her lips. She was enjoying this, the thrill of applying her intellect and quirk in such a dynamic, high-stakes environment. They reached the central chamber, a vast, circular cavern lit by an eerie, pulsating green light emanating from a monstrous, organic growth at its center. The air here was thick, heavy, almost viscous with a raw, unstable quirk energy, and guarding it were not just more mutants, but a dozen figures in sleek, dark combat gear, highly trained mercenaries, their quirks expertly controlled. Their movements coordinated with deadly precision. These were the ones Jiro had detected. Well, One of them, a man with a chillingly calm voice and eyes that glowed faintly, spoke. His quirk, Naruto instantly deduced, was psionic dampening, designed to negate or disrupt other quirks. Looks like we have some uninvited guests. And one of them, I believe, is the elusive Maelstrom. He snapped his fingers. Contain them. Alive, if possible. We have orders to analyze his quirk. Orders from whom? Naruto asked, his voice cutting through the tension, cold and sharp. From the architect, the leader replied, a smirk playing on his lips. The one who truly understands the path to the future. And you, Maelstrom, are a vital component of that future. Your primal quirk is just what we need to complete the master's work. Quote, Naruto's eyes flared with a dangerous, crimson light. The master's work, is it? More like a perversion. You'll never succeed. We already have, the leader said, pointing to the pulsating organic growth. We've stabilized the nexus. The primal resonance is ours to command. And your quirk, once we've extracted its essence, will be the final key. Mirko snarled. Like hell you will. You want a piece of him, you go through me first. She launched herself forward, a hurricane of kicks, a blur of pure, untamed aggression. Jiro immediately began projecting a series of disruptive sonic frequencies, targeting the mercenaries, comms, their support items, trying to disorient them. Naruto unleashed the full, terrifying power of his Maelstrom. He didn't just fight, he commanded the very forces of the cavern. He created localized gravitational eddies that pulled mercenaries off balance, micro-vortices of wind that snatched their weapons from their hands, and kinetic nullification fields that caused their attacks to simply vanish. He was a force of nature, a controlled hurricane of destructive precision. The battle was brutal, savage. Mirko was in her element, her powerful legs shattering bone, tearing through armor. Her fighting style was a beautiful, terrifying dance of pure aggression and raw power. She fought with an almost gleeful ferocity, exhilarated by the challenge. Jiro, despite her non-combat quirk, proved invaluable. She wasn't just disrupting, she was analyzing the mercenary quirks, relaying weaknesses to Naruto and Mirko. Ed focused sonic pulses to rupture pressure points, to destabilize structures, and even to create temporary, localized sonic barriers to protect her allies. She used her earphone jacks not just to hear, but to feel the energetic signatures of the primal resonance, warning Naruto of energy surges from the organic growth. Naruto was magnificent. He was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. He moved with impossible speed, a blur of motion as he used temporal flux to perceive and counter every attack. He absorbed energy blasts, then redirected them with increased force. He shattered the psionic dampening quirk user by creating a focused maelstrom of mental feedback, overloading his brain with his own quirk's disruptive energy. He was a force of reckoning, driven by the horrors he had witnessed. The mercenaries, for all their training, were overwhelmed. They fought with desperation, but their organized tactics crumbled against the sheer, overwhelming power of Naruto and Mirko, guided by Jiro's keen intellect. Finally, only the organic growth remained, pulsating ominously. It was a massive, sentient blob of mutated quirks, absorbing the ambient energy of the primal source, attempting to grow, to stabilize. It was the Chrysalis itself, finally nearing its horrifying maturity. It's growing, Jiro exclaimed, her voice strained. The energy signature is spiking. It's trying to propagate. It's trying to consume the primal source, Naruto growled, his eyes blazing with maelstrom energy. And reshape it into a weapon. We need to cut it off. Mirko roared, preparing for a devastating kick. No, Naruto commanded, his voice sharp. Physical force will only scatter its essence, make it replicate. It needs to be undone, not destroyed. Its fundamental energetic structure must be unraveled. He stepped forward, extending both hands towards the pulsating mass. His maelstrom quirk flared, not with destructive force, but with a complex, intricate pattern of energy. He wasn't blasting it, he was performing a delicate, precise deconstruction. He was unraveling the very fabric of its existence, reversing the forced mutations, breaking down the artificial bonds that held its monstrous form together. He felt the raw, primal energy fighting back, resisting his will, but his mastery was absolute. The organic growth pulsed violently, its eerie green light flickering, then dimming. It began to shrink, to shrivel, its unnatural energy dissipating, dissolving into nothingness, leaving behind only dust and the scent of ozone. Naruto swayed slightly, the effort immense, but his eyes held a triumphant glint. He had not just defeated a monster, he had undone a perversion. Mirko and Jiro stood panting, exhausted, but their eyes were fixed on Naruto, a mixture of awe, respect, and something deeper. They had witnessed the terrifying scope of his power, not just its destructive capability, but its profound ability to manipulate reality itself. You just reversed its evolution, Jiro breathed. Her voice filled with wonder. You dismantled its very quirk. That's what a true Maelstrom does, Naruto replied, his voice still a little strained. It doesn't just destroy, it controls the currents, it redirects the flow, it can even reverse it. He looked at Mirko, then at Jiro, a rare, genuine exhaustion in his eyes. This place, it was just a taste of what AFO's legacy truly means. And the architect, they are still out there. They will be far more dangerous. Mirko simply stared at him, her chest heaving. She felt a primal thrill, a deep admiration for his sheer, terrifying capability. He was everything she admired, powerful, decisive, unyielding. And he had just fought with a controlled fury that rivaled her own, but with a depth of power she could only dream of. The fierce competitive spirit within her was now tempered by a profound respect, and a new, unspoken desire to stand by his side. Jiro, always the observant one, saw the subtle exhaustion in Naruto. The sheer effort it took for such an act of intricate unraveling. She also saw the raw power in him, the almost godlike control he possessed. He wasn't just a powerful anomaly, he was a necessary force. And standing beside him, even in this desolate, horrifying place, felt undeniably right. The intellectual connection between them had deepened into something more profound, something akin to a shared understanding of the universe's hidden rhythms. The cavern, now silent save for the dripping condensation, felt cleansed. But the whispers of the abyss, the echoes of all for one's monstrous ambition, still lingered. And Naruto knew, with chilling certainty, that this was only the beginning. He turned to Mirko and Jiro, a silent acknowledgement of their shared purpose, their newfound bond. The hunt had just begun. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Architect's Shadow and the Strategist's Gambit. The air in the grand atrium of the Celestia Tower shimmered with the opulent glow of 1,000 crystal chandeliers, casting diamond splinters of light onto the polished marble floors. A soft, melodic strains of a string quartet wove through the murmuring throng of Musudafu's elite, politicians, industrialists, high-ranking heroes. And the discreetly powerful, the scent of exotic floral arrangements mingled with expensive perfumes and the dry, metallic tang of unspoken ambition. This was the annual Benefactors Gala, ostensibly a charitable event, but in reality, a meticulously choreographed ballet of power, influence, and veiled threats. It was a hunting ground for those who wielded power not through physical quirks, but through whispers, wealth, and strategic alliances. And tonight, Naruto Uzumaki, dressed in a custom-tailored dark suit that seemed to absorb the light, was the most dangerous predator in the room. His previous encounters, the raw, physical clash with Mirko, the intellectual infiltration with Momo, the nuanced sensory game with Jiro, and the emotionally charged revelations at the Todoroki estate, had sharpened his focus. The information gleaned from each interaction had formed a terrifyingly cohesive picture. All for One's influence was far from confined to the shadows. It was a sprawling, multi-headed hydra, embedded within the very fabric of society, leveraging political power, economic might, and technological innovation. And at the heart of this particular tendril, the intelligence suggested, was a figure known only as the Architect, a master manipulator who operated through proxies, never showing his hand, yet his influence was felt in every illicit transaction, every corrupt policy. Tonight's gala was rumored to be the stage for a critical exchange, a transfer of leverage that could severely hamper Naruto's efforts to dismantle AFO's lingering network. Naruto moved through the glittering crowd with a quiet confidence that drew eyes, yet subtly deflected scrutiny. His Maelstrom quirk, as always, was an ambient field, processing information beyond the visible spectrum. He felt the subtle shifts in the room's ambient electromagnetism that indicated hidden recording devices, the heightened heartbeats of nervous individuals, the almost I am Perceptible energetic fluctuations of quirks being discreetly activated for social influence or minor acts of espionage. He was a silent censor, mapping the intricate web of deceit and power. He exchanged polite, anodyne pleasantries with dignitaries, his natural charisma a disarming shield. His voice was smooth, confident, laced with just enough charm to make him memorable, but not enough to seem overtly suspicious. He was a chameleon, blending seamlessly into the luxurious backdrop, all while his mind raced, dissecting conversations, cross-referencing faces with data points from Momo's extensive dossiers. His primary target was a corporate magnate known as Kenjiro Sato, a man with a bland public persona but a deeply entrenched connection to the black market research facilities. Sato, however, was merely a pawn, a conduit. Naruto needed to find the true puppet master operating through him. He was circling Sato, subtly influencing the flow of conversation around him with strategic positioning and casual remarks. When a familiar, elegant voice cut through the background hum. "Naruto-san, what a delightful surprise to see you here. I wasn't aware independent security consultants frequented such exclusive gatherings." Momo Yaoyorozu approached, a vision of refined grace in an exquisite evening gown of deep sapphire. Her dark hair was styled in an elegant updo, adorned with delicate pearls. And her presence exuded an aura of quiet intelligence and understated power. Her eyes, however, held a spark of knowing amusement as she caught his gaze. She was here officially, reprise. NTING her family's philanthropic contributions, yet her internal comms, a discreet earpiece, was undoubtedly linked to a secure network. Naruto offered her a genuine, charming smile. "Momo-san, the pleasure is all mine. And I assure you, my definition of exclusive often involves less champagne and more explosions. Tonight is a refreshing change of pace." "Indeed," Momo replied, her voice calm, a slight playful glint in her eyes. Her communication with Naruto was a carefully constructed subtext, using polite social phrases to convey crucial information. Though one must be careful. The currents here are deceptively calm. Many hidden obstacles beneath the surface. "Understood," Naruto responded, mirroring her coded language. "My sensors indicate a high probability of submerged icebergs. Any new data on their trajectory?" Momo subtly shifted her weight, a discreet gesture only Naruto would notice. "Preliminary analysis suggests a convergence. A particularly large iceberg is scheduled to pass through the primary trading lanes within the next hour. Its signature is unusually complex. Difficult to ascertain its true composition." She gestured subtly with her fan towards Kenjiro Sato, who was now engaged in a hushed conversation with a gaunt, shadowy figure in a corner. Naruto's eyes narrowed. "Complex, you say, and a specific trading lane. Perhaps we should attempt a direct observation of its surface details." He was signaling their intention to approach Sato. "A prudent course of action," Momo agreed, her expression serene. "But the currents around that particular iceberg are quite strong. It will require a delicate approach. And perhaps a diversion." Just as Naruto considered her words, a new, unmistakable presence flared into the atrium. The air suddenly felt charged, vibrant, and delightfully chaotic. "Momo-chan, there you are, you little social butterfly." Mitsuki Bakugo, a blazing comet in a sea of stars, swept into their vicinity. Her dress, a vibrant crimson, was as audacious and untamed as her personality, its cut drawing every eye. Her wild blonde hair seemed to crackle with an unseen energy, and her laughter, loud and uninhibited, cut through the polite murmurs like a thunderclap. She was utterly out of place, utterly fabulous, and utterly magnetic. She slammed a hand onto Naruto's shoulder, a surprisingly firm, almost proprietary touch. "Uzumaki, you actually cleaned up nice. Thought you only wore tactical gear and the smell of ozone. Don't tell me you've gone soft on me." Her tone was teasing, but her eyes, bright and challenging, sparkled with an almost competitive fire as she assessed him. Naruto chuckled, a genuine, unforced sound. "Mitsuki-san, you truly are a force of nature. And I assure you, the suit merely disguises the tools of the trade. I'm always ready for a little, necessary disruption." His gaze lingered on her, appreciating her bold, unyielding spirit. He found her complete lack of pretense exhilarating. Mitsuki grinned, her eyes flicking to Momo. Then back to Naruto. Necessary disruption. Huh, good. Because this party needs a good shake-up. All these old farts acting like they're saving the world when they're probably just trying to screw each other over. Honestly, it's boring me to tears. Her voice, though loud, carried an underlying intelligence, a blunt assessment of the social dynamics. Momo, ever the poised one, simply offered a polite, if slightly strained, smile to Mitsuki. Mitsuki-san, it's lovely to see you. You're certainly bringing a vibrant energy to the evening. Her tone was diplomatically neutral, but a flicker of amusement crossed her features as she watched Mitsuki's audacious entrance. Vibrant. More like, not going to sit here and pretend to be fascinated by the price of rare earth metals. Mitsuki scoffed, then leaned into Naruto, her voice dropping slightly, though still loud enough to make nearby heads turn. So, Uzumaki, which one of these old farts is your target? Let's go cause some trouble. I'm feeling restless. This was the diversion Momo had implied. Mitsuki, with her innate ability to command attention and disrupt social norms, was a perfect, unpredictable chaos factor. Naruto's eyes met Momo's, a silent communication passing between them, a plan forming. Mitsuki-san, your enthusiasm is admirable. Perhaps you could assist me in drawing out a particular, stagnant pond of influence. Kenjiro Sato, over there. He subtly indicated the magnate. He's notorious for his dull conversation. Perhaps you could inject some much-needed life into his evening. Mitsuki's grin widened, a predatory gleam in her eyes. Dull conversation, you say? Oh, I can fix that. Nothing livens up a party like a good verbal sparring match. Hold my, this expensive-looking drink. I'm going to go educate Mr. Sato on the true meaning of spirited candor. With a swish of her crimson dress, Mitsuki stalked towards Kenjiro Sato, a hurricane of bold confidence. Heads turned, conversations faltered. Sato, initially looking flustered, was now being subjected to Mitsuki's unfiltered opinion on his corporate ethics, delivered with cutting wit and a booming laugh. The gaunt, shadowy figure he had been speaking with subtly shifted, his face obscured, but Naruto felt a faint, almost imperceptible surge of agitation from his Maelstrom senses. He was reacting. Effective diversion, Momo murmured. A ghost of a smile on her lips. Mitsuki-san certainly has a unique talent for compelling engagement. Indeed, Naruto agreed, his eyes fixed on the shadowy figure. Now clearly agitated by Mitsuki's public disruption. Now, to leverage the opening she has so graciously provided. While Mitsuki drew the majority of the room's attention with her audacious confrontation of Sato, Naruto and Momo moved with seamless coordination. Their goal, to get close enough to the shadowy figure to ascertain his identity and, if possible, his purpose. Momo, using her unparalleled intellect, subtly guided Naruto through the social maze. She knew the guest list, the seating arrangements, the likely escape routes. She used her creation quirk, not for combat, but for execu. Eyesight social camouflage, subtly creating a distraction, a dropped glass, a misplaced napkin that caused a ripple of polite chaos, or providing a legitimate reason for their presence in a particular area, retrieving a lost heirloom for a distant relative. Her movements were elegant, her whispers of guidance concise and perfectly timed. Naruto, meanwhile, utilized his Maelstrom quirk for deep-level sensory penetration. He wasn't just observing body language, he was feeling the subtle shifts in air pressure that indicated a concealed weapon, the micro-vibrations in vocal cords that betrayed a hidden lie. The ambient electromagnetic interference that pointed to encrypted communication devices. He could discern the faint, unique energetic signature of the shadowy figure's quirk, even though it was passively suppressed. It felt fragmented, almost like a mosaic of different energies, cleverly woven together. Interesting. Like a lesser version of All for One himself, or someone with a similar type of quirk. They got closer. The shadowy figure was tall, gaunt, and moved with an almost unnerving fluidity. His face remained obscured by the play of light and shadow, but Naruto could feel the latent power radiating from him. A chilling echo of the energy he'd encountered in the Chrysalis project and at Mount Cinder. This was no pawn. This was an executive. As they reached the edge of the figure's personal space, Momo subtly brushed against a passing waiter, causing him to momentarily stumble. In that fleeting second of distraction, Naruto acted. His hand moved, not to touch the figure, but to casually brush against a potted plant nearby. In that millisecond, his Maelstrom quirk unleashed a precisely targeted, invisible electromagnetic pulse, not powerful enough to cause widespread damage, but focused specifically on the communication devices that the shadowy figure was clearly wearing. A subtle flicker in the light, a barely audible static crackle, and then, silence. The figure's earpiece and internal comms went dead. The figure stiffened, his head snapping towards Naruto, his obscured face betraying a flicker of annoyance. He knew he had been targeted. He knew Naruto was responsible. A rather unsubtle maneuver, Mr. Uzumaki, the figure said, his voice a low, cultured purr, devoid of any discernible accent. Considering the setting, directness, I find, is often the most efficient form of subtlety. Architect, Naruto countered, his voice calm, using the intel from Jiro's network. Especially when dealing with those who prefer to hide in the shadows. The figure's head tilted, a hint of something predatory in his stance. So, you know my moniker. The Maelstrom has indeed been busy. But you walk a dangerous path, child. Probing into affairs far beyond your comprehension. On the contrary, Naruto replied, his smile unwavering. I understand them perfectly. You and your master are attempting to force the evolution of quirks, to harness the primal source, to control destiny. And I'm here to ensure that particular future never comes to pass. Such bravado, the architect scoffed, a flicker of an arcane quirk energy emanating from his hand, quickly suppressed. Do you truly believe a single, powerful quirk can defy the inevitable? The master's will is absolute. His vision, undeniable. You are merely a temporary anomaly. An anomaly with enough power to dismantle your operations. Naruto stated, his voice quiet, but with an underlying steel that brooked no argument. The Chrysalis project is neutralized. The Echo Collective is crippled. And now, your little transaction with Mr. Sato is being broadcast to a very interested party who will ensure he faces the full extent of the law. He gestured subtly to Momo, who had discreetly activated a comms link to an independent ethical news agency she had cultivated, feeding them Kenjiro Sato's incriminating data. The architect's calm facade finally cracked. A flicker of genuine rage, sharp and cold, crossed his obscured face. He hadn't anticipated such intricate planning, such a multi-pronged assault. You interfere with forces you cannot hope to control, Uzumaki. You will regret this. I rarely regret necessary actions. Naruto countered. And I assure you, the only regret here will be yours, architect. You underestimated the power of true intent, and the resolve of those who oppose your perversion of quirks. As he spoke, a small, subtle gravitational tremor emanated from Naruto, imperceptible to most, but designed to cause a momentary instability in the architect's footing, throwing his aim off if he decided to attack. It was a preemptive measure, a warning shot. The architect, sensing the subtle manipulation of his balance, narrowed his eyes, then gave a sharp, almost imperceptible nod to a nearby aide. He was retreating. He was too exposed, too vulnerable in this public setting to engage directly. This is not over, Maelstrom, the architect hissed, his voice a low, chilling promise. The game has only just begun. And you have just chosen your side. The master will be most displeased. With that, he slipped away, melting into the crowd with an unnatural speed, leaving behind a lingering scent of ozone and something akin to scorched earth. Naruto watched him go, a sense of grim satisfaction. He had made his move, disrupted a critical transaction, and unmasked a key player in AFO's network. But he also knew he had made a powerful enemy. He's gone, Momo confirmed, her voice now back to its usual poised tone, though a flicker of relief was evident in her eyes. And the data on Sato has been transmitted. The independent press will have a field day. It will disrupt a significant portion of their financial network. Excellent work, Momo, Naruto said, his gaze warm. Genuinely appreciative. Your tactical acumen is unparalleled. You were instrumental. Momo blushed faintly, a rare and charming display. It was our combined effort, Naruto-san. And D. Mitsuki-san's wonderfully disruptive presence. Mitsuki, having successfully reduced Kenjiro Sato to a trembling, humiliated mess, strode back towards them, a triumphant grin on her face. Well, that was fun. The old badger almost burst a blood vessel. So, did you get what you needed, Uzumaki? That shadowy creep looked like he was about to blow a fuse when I started screaming at Sato. More than I expected, Naruto admitted, a hint of amusement in his eyes as he looked at her. Your unique approach to diplomacy proved invaluable, Mitsuki-san. You truly are a master of chaos. Mitsuki barked a laugh, throwing an arm around his shoulder, completely disregarding social graces. Chaos is my middle name, pretty boy. And you're the quiet storm that rides it. I like that, we make a good team. Her touch lingered, a possessive warmth that spoke volumes. She looked at Momo. And you, Momo-chan, you're too quiet for your own good. But you're smart, really smart. We need more of that. Momo smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile now. Thank you, Mitsuki-san. Your directness is certainly refreshing. She looked at Naruto, a sense of shared accomplishment in her gaze. The architect, he mentioned his master. All for one. Naruto nodded, his expression grim. Indeed, it seems his influence is far wider, far deeper than we initially anticipated. This architect is clearly a high-level lieutenant, and he has access to a power that echoes AFO's quirk. A dangerous new player. He paused, then looked at both women, a flicker of something protective in his eyes. This game is escalating. The risks are becoming far greater. Good, Mitsuki declared, her eyes blazing with challenge. I thrive on higher stakes. And the thought of taking down some creepy shadow boss who thinks he owns the world. Now that's what I call a party. Her hand subtly squeezed Naruto's arm. Momo, ever thoughtful, gently took Naruto's other arm. Then we must be even more vigilant. And prepare. Our combined strengths will be essential. Her touch was softer, more reassuring, a quiet declaration of unwavering support. Naruto looked at the two powerful, complex women beside him. Mitsuki, fiery and bold, a whirlwind of exhilarating energy. Momo, brilliant and poised, a quiet force of intellect and grace. Both, in their own unique ways, drawn to his purpose, his power, and his being. The political intrigue of the night had not only yielded crucial intelligence and struck a blow against a foe's network, but it had also solidified the burgeoning bonds between them, forging a nascent, unspoken alliance that transcended mere strategy. They were a team, a force to be reckoned with. And he knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within his maelstrom, that he would need every one of them for the storm that was rapidly approaching. Chapter 6 End. The End. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.